What is happening, people of the interwebs? Welcome back to the Jesus and Coffee Show. I'm Todd Frazier, your host as always, and today I've got a special treat. In studio, we have got my friend David Gaulton. He is the creative worship pastor at Friends Church Yorba Linda. He is the president and founder of Jesus Use Me, a nonprofit organization, and he's got a brand new song that is out now and a new album coming in 2021. Welcome with me to the show, David Gaulton. David, how you doing, buddy? Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, man.
You're actually only the fourth person to have multiple episodes on Jesus and Coffee so far. It's an honor.
Who are the other people?
Well, Tammy, because she's been on like a lot.
It's like a wedded marriage agreement.
It's like a requirement part of our vows was every other show I have to at least get a shout out or be in it.
Just great.
And this is so shout out to you, sweetheart. So you've got a lot of stuff going on. This is a weird season.
There's a lot of things going on.
Right. Yeah. Weird season. A lot of stuff happening with things changing at church.
Yep.
Being the worship pastor. Technically, what's your title now? You're the lead worship.
Yeah, I'm the Friends creative worship pastor.
Okay.
Yeah, so oversee all things with music and technology, Sunday services, online services, like kind of all that stuff. Work with all them and oversee all that.
And we started having outside services now, and next week we move inside, so that's kind of exciting. Is that a little bit stressful on you with all the getting the details dialed in with the teams and stuff?
It's very familiar, so
sure.
I'm excited to get back. I think I have a sense of like it's going to be really nice to be back. And at the same time, it's been fun to have some weekends off.
Yeah. Very different feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I was thinking about, I was doing the dishes the other day and I was just kind of like thinking about what's to come and kind of having one of those moments where you're kind of like recapping what's happening. And I'm like, it's been a nice break, but at the same time, I'm ready to just be with people and to, there's nothing like worshiping in it as a community together.
100%.
So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and getting back to the routine and just like the first weekend in the tent, I was like, this is nice to be around people.
Right.
There's just a feel of being with a group of people, especially when we're doing worship and stuff like that. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
But
really good.
Beyond that, you've got something that we actually haven't talked about on here before, but you are the founder and president of an organization called Jesus Use Me, which I am proud to be a board member of. It's fantastic, right? I'm actually wearing the shirt.
Hey.
Here it is, right? The
logo tee.
The Jesus Use Me. So, and along with that, that's where all of your music lives for the most part. Yeah. All the David Gaulton old stuff, and then the Jesus Use Me albums. And you have a brand new single that's dropping, or has dropped, and the music video is dropping, or
it's gonna come out in about a week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Standing strong.
Standing strong.
And so when you released it, you've been talking with my oldest daughter about your song because as soon as you premiered it at the Jesus Use Me Youth Night.
Yep.
Was it in 2019 or was it 18?
About a year ago.
It feels a long time ago.
Yeah, it was exactly a year ago.
But she listened to that song. She's like, "Dad, what is that song?" And I was like, "It's not out yet. You can't have it." And so she's been waiting and waiting and waiting, and now she's just very excited because it's out. So where did this? Because this is a different style than what you've done in the past.
It's definitely a different style. Yeah, it actually was. It was something that like wasn't really planned. It was a song that I had written with my good buddy Troy Wellstat, who's an incredible musician and producer up in Portland, and we've spent a lot of years just making music together. We wrote a song called Father of Lights that we've sung at the church a lot. And then he's just a great like friend and great producer. So we ended up spending some time. I flew up to Portland and we wrote this song Standing Strong, and it was all around Ephesians 6 and the armor of God. And we brought it back, and I was really stoked on it. And then kind of after, sometimes you create something and afterwards you start looking at it, you're like, I don't like this about it, or I like that about it. So it kind of sat around for a year or so, 6 months to a year. And then the Jesus Use Me event was coming up, and was just thinking about the type of themes that we want to talk about for these students, and like how do we want to encourage them as they start a new school year, and just thinking about like, man, like the opportunity students have if they stand strong in their faith could really change the trajectory of their schools, their families, whatever they're involved, if it's extracurricular activities. And wanted to really encourage them with that. Like if it's like you can stand strong on this foundation that is Jesus Christ, no matter where you are. So I was like, what if we took that song, but then it didn't feel like really like youth oriented at the time, and so I gave it.
So the style you ended up with is not the style you originally wrote it in.
No.
That's cool.
It's totally different. Like if you would hear it, you'd be like, "Is this the same song?" But so I gave it to Mike Mata and Josh Catalan, who are at the church and at Friends, and they are good friends and they're amazing producers. And at the time, what was interesting is we were having conversations, Mike and I, around making church music, and then also, they're involved with producing music that's outside of church as well. And I was just like, having this conversation with him is like, how can we sometimes dumb down the production, or why do we kind of like take the creativity back for songs that are in the church? And I was trying to push Mike and just saying like, dude, like, what would we be proud to show anybody? Regardless
church or not,
if they're in church or not, like this music. And so we were having that conversation way before. So then maybe a month or two later, I give him this song. I was like, hey, would you mind taking a stab at it? Him and Josh, our buddy, they started working on it, and they sent, I remember they sent me this text, and they're like, oh my gosh, we are so pumped about this song. And I'm like, oh, okay, send it to me. So they sent it to me, and I like listened to it, and I literally was like blown away. And part of it was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard, / like, I'm so nervous. Like, I can't pull this off. Like, this is too cool for me. This is Justin Bieber worship, or whatever it would be.
That's so funny.
Where I've just been so in one lane of acoustic guitars and like contemporary worship sound that I hadn't really allowed myself to think of like, well, if I was really to express with like, paint with any color that you could paint on this canvas, what would you do? And so that process actually really helped stretch me musically and creatively, and to think about, what am I capable of doing, with the art that God's given me. Yeah. And so this one is really exciting for me, because I think it's a new chapter in my life too, where it's like, it allows me to just be more bold and even be creative and collaborate with people that we're just not operating in a box. It's like, how can we tell a story of faith that is relevant to everyday people, and it's people in the church and outside of the church, and, how to create music for them. So I feel like this is one of those songs that goes there. Yeah. And so I'm really excited about it.
Well, cause I remember at the event when you were rehearsing to get ready, because I hadn't heard it yet either. And then I heard something coming from the worship center, and I was outside doing something for the kids. And I come in, and I'm like, what was that? And you're like, I don't know, man, this is good. It's new. I'm not sure. And it was great. Like like I said, my daughter loved it. I think all the kids really, it really works with that generation really well. And I enjoy it because it is a different speed. Like it's not your typical contemporary worship sound.
Not at all. Yeah.
But I just think that's really neat that you allowed yourself to be stretched, right? Because a lot of times as musicians or artists, getting out of a comfort zone sometimes, usually it ends up with something good, but sometimes it's really, really scary to try that.
Yeah, and I had to really just trust Mike and Josh in the process, because I was like, first of all, do you think I can like do this authentically and it's not like fake or cheesy for me, like, to be on this song? And they're like, no, man, I think it's great. And like for them to even like affirm that, and for me to trust them of like, what creative decisions are we going to make with our music? And it was really a step of faith. And I think for me, I'm super glad that I did it. And I think, just hearing some of the responses too of just people, they're just really connecting with it. So I'm excited for that. So
now, you said you went up to Portland and you wrote it. Did you go up to write it, or it just kind of was spontaneous? Hey, let's write a song.
Yeah. So every once in a while, you might take like a trip up there, or not just specifically to Portland, but like I just have to create time right now in my life to either write or like go and write with somebody, because just with 2 kids and being married and working at the church, it just doesn't happen. Like I don't just wake up and like, I'm gonna write a song today. Like you just really have to like carve out time. And so it's like one of those things I just try to do periodically, is just carve out some time to create. And I wish I could do it more. But yeah, so we just went up. I was like, hey, I'm going to take, I think it was like 2 days.
Okay.
And then flew up there and wrote for straight 2 days and flew straight back home. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was really
what
cool.
did you go up there with an idea before? Like, I'm just curious about the songwriting process. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to write about, or was it inspiration that just God revealed to you as you were there, or what was that like?
Well, I've always been very drawn in by the armor of God. And just thinking like how when we experience spiritual warfare, it's like, what do we do? Like when stuff starts happening in our lives that you're like is unexplained, or you're feeling attacked, or like, why am I fighting with my spouse in this way? Or how come these things are happening around our community? Or like, you can just kind of maybe sense just unrest spiritually. And it doesn't happen all the time, but I think there's a, when those moments happen, I always am drawn back to the armor of God. And when I think about the armor of God, the thing that always would stand out to me, it's like, okay, it's the helmet of salvation, the shield of faith, the breastplate of righteousness, the sword of the Spirit, and it just keeps going on. But it says it's all around. You put that on to stand strong when the day of evil comes. It's not like you're supposed to like go and like, now you're just going to go, slash the devil
havoc,
in the head.
Right.
It's
not
like,
to go riot in the streets.
Right.
It's literally because you're putting on protection for when you're attacked.
Right. So it's like when the day of evil comes, you can stand firm. And I was just like, that's such an interesting concept. Is because like usually we gear up to go into battle, to go fight. But then God is really the one who does the fighting for us.
Absolutely.
And it's just like kind of like we just need to be protected in our minds and in our hearts and be able to stay in battle. But really we just have to stand still and God does the work. And so especially, now I just think it's such like an interesting concept to even think about. That like so much going on in our world. It's like, how am I supposed to respond? What am I supposed to do on social media? How am I supposed to act with my family or friends that have different opinions than me? And I think I just keep going back to Ephesians 6 and standing strong in our faith and just being covered by this armor. And so, yeah, that's part of the reason why I'm excited how like just the timing of all of it worked out to have it come out.
And I think the other thing about that, the way you explain that message, is it also lines up with the Jesus Use Me message. Because when you allow yourself to be used, things are going to come against you. The enemy doesn't like it when we go out in our faith and be like, hey, we're going to stand for Jesus. So this is a perfect, I think, precursor to say, hey, the whole purpose of the Jesus Use Me movement is anybody can be used by Jesus. You just have to be willing. Right? You have to take that step, make the prayer, and this is a great, almost like an anthem for the precursor to stand strong, Jesus use me. And then going to have to stand strong again. So I think it's awesome. So I have a question. The album cover, or at least the single cover, it's a astronaut. Is there a significance behind that?
Well, so
I mean, it's super cool looking. So I love that.
It's pretty awesome. I don't know if you noticed that. It also has the Jesus Use Me emblem on it. I don't know if you've noticed that, but the astronaut is coming out of that. Notice
the circle is not just a circle. It's this
guy.
guy.
Guy. So got to work another time with another amazing creative, Brandon Gillette, who's on works with our church as well. And we were collaborating together on the cover. And what's interesting is I have astronauts in my office, like on my wall.
Oh, that's right.
And then I have like a little picture of it. And there's just something that's always like kind of drawn me to astronauts and like, you can float through space. Like what? Like,
did you want to be an astronaut as a kid?
I think more than anything, I was like, astronaut would be super cool. I was never like, superhero guy. Like I didn't really get into superheroes.
You wanted reality. Superheroes aren't real guys, but astronauts really go to the moon and float around in space. Really come on, why would you, like, Captain America, whatever, give me Neil Armstrong.
So Brandon knew that I love astronauts, and so he just kind of threw one in there. And at first I was just kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And he was just like, I kind of know you like astronauts. And then like I started like thinking about it. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome, because in a lot of ways, it parallels the song. Because the astronaut cannot survive without their suit. And just thinking about, you just wouldn't think of stepping onto the moon just with a
This.
shirt and shorts. You know, you're gonna be you got the helmet on, you got the air pack, you got like everything,
All of it,
all the gear that goes with it. And I think as Christians, it draws a parallel to the armor of God. That like I think as Christians we should like think on a daily basis that if we're gonna step out onto our daily lives, this earth. Like, I kind of want to think of it as, like, we need to be astronauts. Like, we need to suit up to be able to survive on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of Christians kind of just get hit down and kind of whacked over the head with life is because we're not really suited up on a day-to-day basis. And trying to draw the parallel between the importance of the armor of God and how important it is for, like, an astronaut to wear the armor or like the suit that is helping him survive on a day-to-day basis. So
yeah, and that's something I think I've found, especially in this season with all the COVID stuff and being disconnected, that I find myself wanting more and more to get in the Word than ever before. Not because of the fear of what's happening, but just like I didn't realize how much I was missing it right before this. I mean, I've been grown up in the church and know all the stuff, but you get to a point where you kind of take it for granted. So, and when those times of struggle come, being able to stand strong and having
they
do constantly, right?
And I think part of it's horrible, like what's happened with the pandemic, and obviously people are losing jobs or they're getting sick and dying, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. But I think the blessing behind it is the reminder that we are mortal. Like things are going to happen. But I think the reminder is that we have a solid rock to stand upon. Yeah. Like we don't have to be
it's not us
afraid. Like it's God's in control. And so it's such a big part of I think this time it's like you really can have faith and not just drowned in the world.
Well, right. You can know that if you are in the armor of God, you can stand strong. It's not going to be easy and it's going to take effort. But if you are faithful and patient, God's going to persevere. And it may not be in this life. That's the thing I think I come back to all the time is our victory may not be in this life physically, because ultimately our eyes are on eternity, and that's the whole purpose of it. So I love that I didn't even think of that analogy of the astronaut look, and you being like, oh, I just like astronauts, and they're like, wait a minute, no, that totally fits. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, there was always this thing for me. There's a guy named Jonas Myron who's written these amazing songs, and actually songs that we know in the church a lot, Cornerstone and 10,000 Reasons and Our God, and like just huge list of songs. And he wrote a song called The Astronaut years back, and it was just all talking about how like we are astronauts. We're like, for him he was kind of using it more of like we're supposed to be like sailing the stars, but like people want to sometimes just keep us grounded and knowing like what is safe in our world, or like not really, you're not able to dream. And so for me, it's like always kind of held on to that whole picture of an astronaut. Like, man, how cool is that to like, we have an opportunity to like go where people have never gone before. And I think I might not ever go into outer space, but it's like, how do we live lives that give us space to dream towards a calling and a destiny that is God ordained and so much bigger than maybe our family puts on us or the world puts on us, of like, you only can do this, you only can do that. And so I've always kind of gravitated.
I love it. Gravitate. See, it's another one. We're just keeping it going.
I'm just really good with
analogies are your thing. I mean, you're a songwriter, so that kind of makes sense.
Analogies are my thing.
Yeah. So you have the singles down. Now, is this connected to a bigger album, or is this part of another project? Or I know we had the live album that was released last year for Jesus Use Me. Is this connected to a bigger project, or is this just a single like?
Yeah. So this is actually going to be, the live album is going to come out 2021.
Oh, the live album isn't out yet.
No.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because I've heard some of the songs mixed, but
you've heard them all.
I've heard. Yeah. Okay.
So this is actually the first release, and then the next couple months we're gonna do 2 more releases. So Father of Lights and For Your Name are gonna come out. And then in 2021, we're going to release the full album. And so Standing Strong will be on there.
Yeah.
Kind of as a bonus track.
Okay. Oh, so it's not part, because that is a live album. Yeah. Correct? Yeah. Which sounds phenomenal. When we've listened to those, it really sounds pretty good. And I think that we can attribute that to Mike being very much like, hey, we want to make this good. We want to make this quality.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely, we recorded at the church, and we were like, I don't know how good we can do with this thing, but it literally took us 2.5 years. Yeah. Because we were trying to figure out, like, how do we make this sound right? Mm-hmm. And I think it was what's interesting is what I've started learning is just over the years, I've done things in my timing. And when that would happen, it doesn't always go the best. Yeah. And God's like, you know what? That's the wrong timing. You know? And so I think in this project and kind of in this season of life, I've just really wanted to surrender on a daily basis to God's timing, and to surrounding people. It just might not look smart, you know, because you're like, well, when you make a product and you spend money to do it, and there's energy and time, and like usually you want to like kind of have that flow kind of synergistically all work together. But I just felt like I wanted to wait, and it wasn't just me. I felt like God was kind of like having us wait. And so, but what's happened through that process is we were able to spend more time on making the album sound great, be able to like even learn how to like make a live record.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother thing, making a live record, like some of the, because it was the 2 years ago youth night or whatever, the previous one that we recorded it. And then thinking about how does, because I'm in my head, I know a little bit about audio, but not to that level. Yeah. I'm like, how do you make this sound like what these albums sound like? And I saw some of the tricks. I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
And sometimes it's like we were picking up little things from different people. Like, how do you get the drums to sound that good? Like, usually you like record drums and it's just like they don't sound as full and punchy and like it sounds, you know, phenomenal. And then we're like, you know, asking friends and different people like, how did it sound that great? And then like you pick up a little tip here. And you're like, ooh, what if we put that on the album? And then like, how do we make it sound like, you know, like we could hear in the audience like it you know, sound a certain way, and like, oh, but how do we support that to make it sound full? And like, oh, we could do this or that. And so certain things you definitely want to like leave on the record because that's just the live record. And then there's other things. It's like, how do we help kind of enhance the sound to make it feel like you're actually there?
Yeah, I think that's the importance of a live album. Is to feel like you're there, to remember that time I was there or whatever. It's so awesome.
Exactly.
So, and in addition to all this music and all the Jesus Use Me stuff, you're writing songs and putting out music through friends as well, right? So do you ever get to the point where you're just like, man, this is too much music? Or is this just like, this is like being in space?
I'm floating in space. I'm an astronaut. I think in my mind, it's been a while since we released music. So 2013, I released kind of my last David Gaulton album.
Right.
And so it's been 7 years since then. We've never really made a big release for Jesus Use Me. And then for friends, you know, I didn't feel like I wanted to be leading the church in a way of like, hey, we have a bigger church, and so let's make an album. It was more like, is God doing something? Like, do we have songwriters that want to write songs? Is there a unique message that God wants us to share right now with our congregation? And as kind of that all has been working together, I started realizing like, oh, there's great producers, there's songwriters, there's kind of this heart for worship that has been developing more and more in our community. And especially in this time, we've been like, okay, well, what does God want to say through this pandemic and all these different things? And so, which has caused us to like start thinking about creating music. But what's really cool is it's all starting to come out now, you know? And so about a year ago, our Pastor Matthew, sat me, Mike Mata, and Matt Roden down. I was just like, what do you guys want to do? Like, if you could dream about what you could do, you know, ministry wise, here at the church or beyond, like, what would it look like? And so what part of what came out of that was to start a record label. And so, you know, we have this vision at the church to see 8,001 people come to Christ in the next 10 years.
Okay.
And so Mike Mata, who's our producer, he was just like, what if we started a record label called 8001 Music? And it's all about reaching the one. It's all about seeing this vision of 8,001 people come to Christ, and us as musicians doing our part to like bring music to the church that's going to help us, be able to do our part if it's through music. Cause it's like, we're not good at other things, so we can write songs. And so what's been happening with all that is we've been creating, music behind the scenes over the last year and a half, to get ready. And now what we're starting to see now this fall is a lot of those dreams coming to fruition. And it's really cool to see like the timing that God's allowed it all to live in. Yeah. And so I'm excited. To me, it feels fresh and new. It feels like I've had enough time just personally where I kind of like was like, am I done recording music? And am I done doing all that stuff? And then all of a sudden, like, I'm like, oh no, like I think God has something fresh to say and something new. So I'm really excited. Yeah,
that's awesome. And I think also in this season when we've been at the place where everything is online and video, it's allowed for a lot of that to kind of take place with a little bit of space for the rest. I mean, you're super busy and there's others that are really busy, but there's a lot of like the musicians that are just kind of like, I got time. Yeah. So it's kind of like the perfect storm for all this to come together. So, cause I know there's always good that comes out of bad things. So,
yeah. And it's been really interesting to like even see, so for Friends Worship, today.
Oh yeah.
We're releasing a new song called Never Fail.
Okay.
And then for next Friday, we're going to release the full album, which is an EP. So it's 6 songs. But what's really cool about that with those songs is in February, we got together just to write songs for the church. And this song Never Fail came out, and it was all around like the thought of where the Israelites came out of Egypt, and now they're going into the Promised Land, and they went through the Promised Land, and they went through all these different wars, and kind of God helped them pretty much conquer that whole land. And they were at the end of all of that, and they were looking back at what God had done, and they were just like, man, every promise that God made came true. He never failed us. And I was like blown away. I'm like, every promise came true? Like
that can't be true.
That can't be
true. Give me
a
Bible. That can't be true.
Yeah, like, are you sure? And what was interesting to me was like a couple things. But the first one was when you're in the middle of chaos and a struggle, like it's hard to remember that God is faithful.
Yeah.
Because you're like, are we going to make it through this financially? Am I going to make it through this health-wise? Am I going to make this through this with these relationships? But then when you get to the end and you look back, you're like, wow, God was faithful.
Yeah.
Like, and so a song like Never Fail started to become so relevant in this time because we're in the middle of something that no one's really gone through, with quarantine and the social unrest that's around. I mean, we've had social unrest, in the, years
But the
ago.
combination of all of it together.
But the combination of all of it, worldwide pandemic shutdown. And it's like, for us to be able to sing a song of God's faithfulness before we get to the end and can look back and say God was faithful, is like, I think that's what, if we can help our church, if we could help our community and beyond, remember that God is faithful, then like, I feel like our job is done, and that's what I think God appreciates that.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a lot of it where it's hard. I mean, that's why they were creating golden calves in the desert, or
they couldn't wait, couldn't be patient.
Yeah, like there's like all these things. And so it's just like part of, I think, my role in the church as a leader is just to keep pointing people back to the never failing faithfulness of God. And so excited for this music to come out. And it's so interesting how God, kind of works it all together. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it totally did. Well, because I think that there's so much that I see coming out now, and I'm like, man, that's a lot of music-heavy creation stuff. Knowing that it's still, I mean, being somewhat creative myself, I mean, I get that it takes some time to do those kind of things, but still, it's a lot with all the things that are kind of lining up, and then coming back to some normalcy stuff, and then having 2 kids and a wife, just life in general, and running an organization.
Well, I think what I've learned is so when I first started out, I was kind of running solo all the time, and you only can go so far, no matter how much you can do running solo. And I think part of what I've learned in this last season is like, I can't do it all. Like, can't be a good dad and be a good husband and run a ministry, and have a separate nonprofit and do, like, you need a team of people.
Yeah.
And so I think for myself, like, I just started like realizing like I can empower other people to do this, and people are super talented. And like they want to be a part of something that's a God story that has direction and vision. And like, as I kind of would invite people into stuff, we just started seeing like people they're excited to be a part of a God story. And so it's been really cool now that like it's, looking back a couple years of like kind of investment with all that. It's just amazing. Like now it's like all of a sudden we have like all this content coming out, and I'm just like, well, it's not, I know it's not me.
Sure.
It's really just the body of Christ coming together in this way, kind of for us, it's creatively, to put together music or stories. And so I'm excited for
I
this
dig
season.
it, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this season too. So I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
I really enjoy our conversations, and I like recording them as often as possible.
Well, yeah, man.
Because
I love you.
I love you too, David.
I love Jesus, and I love coffee,
and it's so great. All right, so Standing Strong is out now. The music video is out. The Friends EP is coming out, and the Jesus Used Me live album is coming out 2021.
Yeah.
Where should they look for all this stuff?
So it's on all social media platforms. Okay. You can go, and there's some links there. Anywhere you listen to music, you'll be able to hear all the music. So Friends Worship or Jesus Used Me, you'll be able to hear all that music there. And then obviously on YouTube and stuff like that, you can search for us. It has the music videos and different things.
I'll put links in the description so it's easy for people to find it.
Go right down
I dig it, man. Awesome, dude. So good. Cheers.
Cheers.